Right-yo. At least she had a bit of a sense of humour. Right. Oh, God, I'm vainer than Fergal Sharky. I've got to have my shark tooth in. I hate taking films of myself sitting in a van because I'm up, bobbing around in the light. I forget that I have this tripod because expressing bodily one's pure centeredness and utter calm and total genuine bright eyes is unfortunately necessary. So your Fergal Sharkies, who's up there, who's been up there for a year with his performative rage. Oh, there are loads of them. They've been doing it for quite a while. I mean, the definition of madness, good old, even old Einstein knew, is to carry on doing the same things and expect a different outcome. Piety and earnestness does not actually reach anybody. But forget that, because your river's wide. There's a river here. I'm sure it's just as fucked. They are damaged. They've been damaged over the last 30 years by all the same processes. And where I used to live for 32 years, it was my base. Hated it. But I love the nature. I mean, none of the people there actually love the nature. They all perform it. Anyway, let's not go on about that. But here's the thing. So you see your Fergals. He's intelligent enough to actually know about the following. But they always make it about somebody. I see, I always have to be multitasking, always. That's what being a parent is in modern Britain. I used to had to about quadruple task. If you want to give your kid the very fullest, genuine life experience with full attention, I would always tell we didn't have any mobile signal, and I only gave a few close friends my home landline. But even if we did have a mobile signal, it would be turned off, unquestionably, until she would be sound asleep. In fact, no, wrong, because I'd be sound asleep with her. I was so exhausted from multitasking all day, and never complaining about it, ever. And you listen to your media in Britain, or even listening to people, I mean, Jesus Christ, the way they kind of make their in-person comments about needing time off. Fucking rubbish. Anyway, go to a country where they breed properly, like Africa or South America, and they don't make comments about it. Anyway, let's keep to the point. So, yes, I had two wonderful examples, as if to remind me this morning. I had to go to the small town, 15, 20 kilometres away. Now, organised means I have my... Well, I'm normally in there. Have I got BPD disorder or something like everything else claims they've got? I always keep everything. I have to have such a system. Oh no, of course it's there, yeah. You see, there is a kind of only 5 months old glasses case from Specsavers. I'm in the bottom third, proudly, so I managed to hustle a voucher for a free pair every 3 years, and I'm told they're quite sexy, so they're kept for going out with the cloth around them. These are if I've got to be doing physical jobs. And anyway, these were so poor, despite paying for the anti-scratch lens. Anyway, so they go in the green case, which is kept up there. I'm told they're not too unattractive. But then, everything went wrong when people started to wear glasses like this. Now, I only need them for reading. I only really need them for reading in lower light. But somebody dropped. The amount of dropped glasses there are in the southwest, which means all their work, their mindfulness, their self-care, their Buddhism, their fucking, the coldest hearts in the world ever doing their hot yoga, all of that doesn't work, because that's the purpose. Right, now, that always goes in there. Right, let's try and keep to the point. So, yeah, there I was, walking through the town, just to go and do a few messages. And it's about 10,000 people, 12,000, 14,000, 12,000 people. And it's actually an okay little town, as towns go. But this region is the source. This is, as I'm walking down, there's a van parked by the side of the road, newish, you can tell by the paint, etc. And on the side of the van, in a public place, public road, is one of these kind of super virtue signalling signages about an organisation. Something or other combined academies. Now, the PR will say that they nourish souls, that they work together in partnership with all sorts of, that what it implied. Anyway, I can't remember what it was. It was so pathetically jargonish and fucking mumbo-jumbo. I was just like, I wonder what that is. A little bit of me thought, maybe they even need somebody to do some actual work on how to be democratic, work, save your rivers, whatever. So I was in a bit of a hurry. As a place where you get free food from the supermarket. It's put out at 9:30. Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Anyway, so I actually just stood there and took a quick photograph rather than write it down on a notepad. And this really aggressive bloke, now he's about 35, well, suddenly shouts, "Hey, what are you doing to my van?" No, well, he said it in that way, that tone. It's a kind of slightly Rupertish tone, but it's got a little bit of kind of, I don't know, a little bit of Romford in it. Meaning that he is one of the many, thousands if not millions, who've jumped on this bandwagon of providing a third, what do they call it? Third sector kind of service into the people. He'll have a girlfriend who's really good at getting grants, etc. Anyway, really expensive sign, this. And I'm just like, what? Because I'm a pathetic little coward. It's like, I'm just taking a photograph of, I saw this organisation on the side of your van. I thought it sounded quite interesting. Look it up later. And he wouldn't let go. Oh, he was really, well, it's private. It's private. It's the worst I've ever heard. And what these people are, now, this pathetic man, 35, wouldn't even know that this began about 20 years ago. This was a very male thing. Only the men used to do this. And they sort of came into my last region, which was, they colonised the Hereford region first, because that's where the first Trustafarians turned up, a few women and one bloke. So they were on their coattails. In other words, they'd met them at Glastonbury, done fucking gobbled loads of drugs with them, and, were bored and, hey, can we go and hustle something out in Herefordshire where there's a bit more space and there aren't so many nasty machete-wielding drug dealers. So yeah, as these blokes began to sort of get into this ruse, this racket, it's a racket of, they put a lot of effort into it. Hard work should not be entirely disparaged, but they will have their signage, some organisation. It'll generally be something to do with hospitality, which means craft beers, or it started with Corona bottles, anyway, and blah blah blah, and it's only to get the women. Nothing wrong with that. There is nothing whatsoever wrong with having a job where you're there as a bloke to attract the babes. Nothing wrong with that. Good on them. But their hospitality there, and then gradually over the years, it started with, first of all, like setting up signage and pretending to have organisations that would connect people together in the countryside, or find placing if you want to do things like woofing. Well, actually, that's not a good example. That's not really true. But this whole host of sort of, we're doing things in your region. We're lovely. We're taking the initiative. And of course, gradually they would add on, or it kind of became compulsory to have these what's the word? Their credentials that they display, that they force in your fucking face. Now, I'm all for total, pure, mutual benefit community. Sharing. It's the only way we save this planet. Setting good examples. But it has to be based on authority. And the only meaning of the word is the original meaning, worth repeating. Something that's worth repeating. In other words, mother hen, because it usually was mother hen, of your sort of progressive alternative. We just used to say alternative in the 80s and 90s. In other words, not in the great big attempting to be just a bit aside of the great big capitalist polluting system. It's like you have to think of things that work and focus on them and help each other to be involved. Now, none of these new lots that came there wasn't really much of the original lot where I used to live, but the new lot came 17, 18, 20 years ago. Now, they wouldn't understand that, but then they are performing. It's all about money. It's basically, I don't want to be a cleaning lady, the whole damn thing. It's like, my name is Jethro. There you go. I'm picking that out of Jethro Tull I referred to this morning. Jethro. I'm Jethro, and I've got this great social entrepreneurship organisation. And then the really sharp-elbowed ones that are good at PowerPoint and, I was going to say interior design, that too. Graphic design or whatever they call it. And can have the fancy web pages and because the bless their cotton socks, the very simplistic councillors who had the power and money 20 years ago in the countryside, they didn't know about any of that. So they were so easily bamboozled, impressed. Well, we're looking for a tender of that function, doing woodland schooling. There you go, there's a good one. Yeah. Let's tender out. We've heard we've got to do a bit of woodland schooling. What's the fuck's that? They'd be better off watching rugby in front of the telly, which is what all Welsh people in power actually think. But no. So you've got a bit of woodland schooling. Who are we going to allow to tender for that, or who's going to tender for that? So they get a few tenders in, or the brochures, and they'll always go for the fanciest brochure. I'm sorry. That's how most parochial people are. Bless them, that's not a judgment, that's a fact. So anyway, basically, your spivs. Those with the most spivvy kind of forceful communication via the brochures. The whole damn thing, fake book, but just became a brochure. They generally ended up with the contracts. Doesn't mean they care. In fact, they're the least likely to care. But here's the point. So yes, 18, 19 years ago, if you were going to something like, always in a public place, now I know exactly, when you're brought up in the hills of North Wales, as I was brought up, I brought myself up, okay, and Old Man Ralph, you very much understand what is public and what's private. Because you're having to roam, I was actually a shepherd, right up on the proper common land, thousands of acres. Imagine your sheep, your pathetic 100 sheep, spread over about 10,000 acres, I think. You've got to know what private and public is, yeah. So you're in a public space, which could even be a car park. It could be a flea market. It could be somebody's hired a market for hired the village hall for local organisations and sales operations, which is all they are, to sell their wares. Public. It's a public space. But if you took interest in some these latent organisations, their setup, and you might, usually well, I have carried a camera in my pocket for 20 years. There you go, just a little one, cheap. And you took interest and ever took photographs of their brochures or their stand, their display stand. And I was an environmentalist. And there were no others, so I was curious who might be displaying in the local church hall, or even Hay Festival, of course, massive Hay Festival of just lies. Who might be displaying that they're participating in the great necessary real fight in the region? Yes, so it was always the blokes. If you took any interest or even took photographs, God, their body language went like, who are you then? What are you doing? Stealing my ideas? Are you? Well, they would never say anything, but their body language, and they would not. It's like once they'd seen you, it's like, God, better keep an eye on that one. You know, and they all look like bearded craft beer advertorials, but skinny versions generally. And I'd forgotten about them. And it was so. It's like I'm not that bothered. But it's so ruins your day. You know, you're just an innocent person, genuinely part of a very, very dispersed, fragile community. You're going about a public space, and some little fucking Rupert, you know, some snot little creep who's kind of, you know, girlfriend had a bit too much magic mushrooms, so it was chucked up on him the night before. Like, it's like you've crossed it's my territory. Really? Public space? The stuff that you've got in your public space is there to be publicised to the public. So here I am, a member of the public, making some notes, taking a photograph for my notes. Okay, they aren't to know. It's almost always, what has been almost always, eventually to parody them. And that, okay, if you're one of these people who pretends to be nice, you'll think, what a horrible man, because he was... No, I'm actually genuinely concerned about how there's never been functional democracy, community at all, ever in the countryside, which I do care about. Anyway, yeah. So this guy today was just the ultimate. And because sometimes when I'm wandering around, I have my recorder and I have it on the recorder. I got so many things like that. But then just as bad, I had to go to the library to charge my battery momentarily, or for half an hour. And this woman at the photocopier, she's making a lot of noise. Now this one can go with a recording I have when I was staying in a youth hostel in Bolivia, and the English girls rampage at all public school girls. And this youth hostel was, and I left my recorder on because it was actually to protect me. Very, very kind of slightly tricky situation, clearly. But the trickiest of them all. Yes, this was a youth hostel that clearly people used who were going to go out very early in the morning to catch the first flights of the day out from La Paz. So you're generally going to be getting up about 5 o'clock. And it's a shared bedroom. That's what they had. And fine, it was actually quite good. And so there's an empty bed kind of next to mine. I'd gone to sleep about 10 o'clock. And oh no, I woke up and put my chronicling recorder on. Yeah, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is not even a weekend day. There's this real racket. I get woken up. And of course it's English women. About 25, maybe even a bit older. I mean, Bolivia is a place you only go for either proper, I mean there's very little there and the nature is pretty good. You go for genuine, thoughtful nature visiting, or just being in a wonderful country where people are just so happy because they have nothing. It's not somewhere you go out drinking at night, but anyway, yeah. When one of the women came in, clearly private school, everything was at the top of her voice, and yeah, okay, she'd had a few drinks and probably even something else, but everybody knew when did the old days end? Maybe about 15 years ago. Every person on the planet would have known. Now, you're going into a shared dormitory, the lights are off, you don't make any noise. But there she was, top of her. I mean, she wasn't totally pissed. And I realised there is no point even saying anything to these people. They are just beyond it. Their total inability, whilst every other word that comes out of their mouth is self-awareness and all of this crap, they are completely incapable of thinking of any other being around them. Maybe Mummy's pathetic, overpriced dog, that might be about it. Anyway, so number 2, but this was just as good. Because this is the real new last 5 or 10 years breed who did start to come into my previous area. This area is just full of them. So you're in a library, and this one actually is unusual. It's most of the time reasonably quiet. And there's a woman at the photocopier making a tremendous noise, and I was doing something that required concentration. You know better at Britain ever to even say anything politely. It's mad. It's like narcissistic Teletubbies everywhere. But this woman had the total look. The wellies, which weren't hunters, deliberately not hunter wellies. They were kind of more workaday wellies, but the perfect kind of knitted natural fabrics, etc., etc., etc. She's about 30, or maybe 35. And she was photocopying an Ordnance Survey map. I was a bit bored. I'd been trying to fix problems on my computer for a little while. And I was like, I thought, I'll tell her just in case she doesn't know. Because fair dinkum, although it's complex, you can get Ordnance Survey maps on your phone. Now, I hate phones. I love maps. I have... Oh, where is it? No, it's in the back. My favourite thing in the world is to have a paper Ordnance Survey map of the region I am. That's it. I can't stand looking at phones. But if you're maybe you're on the border of 2 regions, because they've got quite expensive now. So if you go to Get Outside, and they deliberately make it, I think it's .co.uk, they deliberately make it not obvious. But if you go through about 2 steps, typing in where your region, putting where you are, whatever, and then a little box that comes out that sort of says map, but it's deliberately, they don't want you to find the fact that inside is the full Ordnance Survey map for free of everywhere. So I thought, okay, I'll tell her, I'll walk her. I like people who like maps, paper maps, not obsessively. So I thought, I'll tell her. I should have also said, do you know what? You're in a fucking quiet space. Why don't you try and do that fucking quietly? That's what everybody else would have done. Well, that's what libraries are just full of madmen and slightly, no, not quite as mad women. You know, it's horrible. Britain's horrible. But anyway, it's like, no, I'll just like honour. She's someone who likes Ordnance Survey maps. She's probably just photocopying it to put it on her Facebook gig, trying to advertise some fake retreats for £500, because those pretty ones, the thin pretty ones, try and get £500 a weekend for their retreats. That's probably what she was doing. But anyway, it's like, and the first thing, it's like automatic. Like, so I just like, oh, good for you. And of course, not paying the copyright fees. Okay, yeah. Good for you. I would do. You've just given me a thought. I think I'll do that. I'll find an OS map and photocopy it because I hate phones. And then I thought, okay, let's be kind of nice just in case she doesn't know. Do you know that the OS system is actually available on the internet? And straight away, Not, oh, thanks for that information. But straight away, it's like they've been brainwashed. Because the ultimate virtue signalling is, and it's all lies because they do use technology, but straight away, their number one way of aggressing is oh, I don't use technology. Technology's all, I mean, it's total and utter lie. If you ever hear somebody say that, would you like to describe it? Your use? I'm interested. Not that I am. Okay, it's just like I met a much older version of this woman 6 months ago, and I mentioned to her, oh, I got to go to the supermarket because I can only afford. I mean, the prices in the southwest are just. First thing she says to me is, oh, I don't go to any supermarkets. Everything from the farm. Well, she didn't say from the farmers' markets, but that's what she meant. All the ridiculously overpriced delis, and okay, fair dinkum, quite a lot. She was actually a once expert chef, and she can't say anything against me because she was working and claiming on the dole. And I would never identify her. You see, there you go. That's loyalty, because we had some useful interactions. But they'll all pretend that they're fucking holier than thou. Anyway, I don't care about her doing that. British government is evil. Even the Pakistani woman of the Your Party is very, very adamant that they're selling arms to the genocidal Israeli regime and others as well. Right, so to the point. So my friend said, a few months later, I happened to be in her place, just rarely able to use the socket quietly for a bit. And see her places full of Waitrose this and Waitrose cans of Waitrose this. Really? So Waitrose, yeah, it's not a supermarket. Of course it's not a supermarket. Yeah. Anyway, this woman. But the way, straight away, just literally, not even a millisecond of like, oh, thanks, or just like, no, seriously, I don't use technology. Yeah, it's like everything to them is a total and utter domination game. Except there's nothing to dominate. These, I have to describe them properly. I know I've just described this particular one perfectly, although my very, very firm matrix, you'll have to listen to my audio made yesterday, is nobody under 40 really ever should be even critiqued. Not even Taylor Swift. Not that I've ever. I think I've briefly heard about a minute of her enough to know that it's just bubblegum, dressed up as more expensive bubblegum. No, you should never. That's the point. The point of society. What society is the older people should, if you've survived all of them, although they're just getting worse. I mean, that's the point. They, as of 20 years ago, began to utterly cripple all the environmental movement. All of it. Many a meeting I would go to from, actually, first Green Party meeting in having settled back out in the countryside I went to was 28 years ago. And this hadn't quite started, but there was one good thing about the Green Party of Hereford then. Well, I could say I went to a meeting, and it's just like, they're not able to do anything. This is just a meeting of shop steward kind of people who were just arguing about who's going to do the committee meeting notes. It was just a joke. Fat, old, useless people who just, I don't know. Yeah, the good thing about them is that 13 years ago, I actually was supporting somebody who should have been supported properly to become a Green councillor or a county councillor. Wonderful woman who said she was going to do it at the last resort. because a year she'd been supporting others who should have been doing it. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. So I was supporting her, and we went to a Green Party thing, bicycle ride. That's right. It's just pathetic. I mean, they've got to have fucking fluorescent just to go for a little spin around the park. But one of those old generation, older than me, actually was honest. He was actually said to me, because the Herefordshire Green Party had actually, or Hereford, had collapsed and disappeared for at least a decade, if not more. He said, so I asked him, I said, I went to one of your meetings back then. What happened to it? I noticed. And he was honest. He's the only honest one I've ever met. He just said, it was just all ego. Ego had collapsed it. But here's the problem, is that this new generation that have come along, starting about 17 years ago, 18 years ago, they gradually, well, they don't want to live in the cities anymore. Fine. Good. But it's like, how can I work in the countryside, not be a cleaning lady, and no one's going to employ me to work on a farm because I'm actually I'm allergic to tractor oil, or I'm all of this. So it's like they go into your life coaching, your mind, then mindfulness comes along and kind of guidance. No, they didn't use that word. That's an okay word, guidance, facilitating people to do the latest, better Buddhist practices and all of this stuff. So those kinds of people then, what else will look good on my profile? I know, I'll go and join the local environmental group yeah, but they're so poisonous. Sorry, they are. And the sad thing is that they're total fragile zealotry, and it's zealotry about themselves and their way. It's all out of a playbook. I do believe it's permanent. It's like a forever chemical. Because such zealotry, you need, unfortunately, to really smash it. Or to smash it yourself. Smash your own crazy zealotry. But they don't allow conversation about how that might be a useful or necessary thing. They don't watch any good art. Even Monty Python, that might be about me. But anyway, yeah, this woman, she just reminded me, even though under 40s must never even be critiqued, because they weren't given a good example by my generation. Even poor Mong, her German mum, who was Heidi, lost it. That's what, 40 years in London, even though she ends up an alcoholic, does to you. There we go. I think that's why I turned my camera on.